Hello, Mandy.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Nzika, and I did jot down two questions that I would like to ask you.
Okay.
One was, what are some of the things the city can do to support houselessness, the houselessness population, specifically addressing addiction?
Specifically addiction. So no one thing is going to solve any of this, but there are organizations, Odyssey House, for example, and others that the services available could be expanded. I visited Metropolitan Health Services this week. They're awesome. They are fantastic, and I think enough people don't know about them. So that's a big help there. But as far as housing, we have enough housing for everyone in the city. People just can't afford it. And whether that's pushing some of these developers that aren't downtown. I don't know who lives in these expensive houses, but also something I passed this year that the city came to me about, I think might help. So we have a lot of these slumlords and these like awful apartment complexes that people are living like dogs, and you only live there because the next stop is the street. And so they're basically going to be able to go after them and throw them in jail. And I think it's the first and only bill I've ever passed that increases a criminal penalty, because they are actively harming people because they won't clean up their properties. So what we want them to do is sell it or clean up their property so that we can have more housing, so that the city doesn't have to pay $2 million to move someone like they did last year. There's all this housing. It just needs to be made safer and cleaned up. And unfortunately, most of what we've seen since COVID is jobs. And the city's not allowed because of state law to raise the minimum wage. So that's always going to be an issue, is wages.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you say, why? Because of the preemption laws that stopped the city from implementing that?
Mm-hmm. We've
So,
tried.
Wait, y'all couldn't do nothing on your behalf to do it. Because it seemed like, I fought a lot around jobs, and the problem was we won at the city level with the state,
Correct.
Because of the preemption law that was blocked. They would sue the city for lying.
I mean, it would be illegal. We can't raise the minimum wage. We can't pass family leave. We can't pass stricter gun laws. There's certain things that my small government colleagues don't want us to do, including raising the minimum wage, which has been done in a lot of big cities around the country.
Right.
Yes. I know you mentioned about losing some portions and gaining some other portions. And I'm curious because my family lives in your district
Where do they live now?
on Belfast. So are they losing you or are they still retaining?
Belfast, Holly Grove?
80, yeah. In the 8700 block.
No, so I'm gaining all the Garden and Lower Garden in most of Central City and most of Broadmoor. Then I'll lose Holly Grove because Holly Grove and Mid City, right across the interstate from each other, are going to be the new district. So they are going to be a lot more heavily represented because I think the voters in Holly Grove are going to be like 50% of the new district. So they will no longer be in this district. But they're going to have a lot more, I don't want to say more representation, but they're going to be pretty significant part of the district in the new district.
There are like almost 40,000 people in New Orleans itself that don't have driving license. We can get rid of the tickets, but then, at the city level, but then when you go to state, they still have a fee at the state. So how can we implement something where the state have a forgiveness for people in the city?
I think that's been tried a couple of times. I feel like Peter Robbins Brown was in that. There was something that, I'm sorry, I don't remember. There was something that passed with driver's license this year. I think that was more if you need your driver's license to go to work, maybe. But you're right, the fees are up there. I know they have a payment plan. I haven't seen that they have a reduction. And that would be something, I think we could do it if I have to go find the money somewhere in the budget. but it does keep people from working.
It does.
So they owe this money, but then they can't go to work. Denise Marcel has been trying to do that. That's who it is.
Yeah, because you say you got to find the money. The people you hold in the hostage don't have the
Can't
money.
work.
So they're never, they can't work or do anything. And I
It's
found that was huge for us because so many people trying to get driving license and move around and go to work and they can't do it because they called you say that the state is willing to, give them this call, they pay, but they miss one payment and they're still right back.
right.
You got all those
I think that's something that's doable to deal with. Finding a little bit more of the money somewhere. I don't know if the DMV is dependent on that money, but on the other hand, if someone owes $3,000, they're never going to pay it. It's similar to the infirmary debt. I mean, if you have someone who keeps going to the infirmary and they owe $200, there's no way they're going to pay that back ever.
We spoke about like the homeless. A portion of the homeless in New Orleans are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated people, and because of that conviction, it is preventing them getting housing on many of the places in there. Also, still with jobs. Is there going to be a change in help in that sense?
There's been very tiny changes, as y'all know, over the years. I think Matt Willard did some changes on that. I don't know. He did on the job. No, he did on job applications and residential, but it's tiny.
No block, no box.
Yeah,
And
it's
the
small.
box.
Because if they want to, they can still run a check and see, even if it wasn't a conviction, just see an arrest. They can on the national databases. I think that's something more the city could address by maybe some of the public, I don't want to say public, but the properties that get public funds to go around it. I know the expungement process, there was a bill passed this year that is going to help some of that, and that does help with housing more than jobs. But some of it is expanding. I know we have some tax credits, but those need to be expanded for people who hire the formerly incarcerated. And by the way, whenever I hear from a business owner that they take part in one of those programs, they have only good things to say. Like literally only good things to say. And those are things that we can try to publicize more, but getting the money for that, getting any money from the state is, blood from a stone sometimes. But I think there are definitely ways to do that little by little.
Because it's affecting the youth also.
Yeah.
It's affecting the youth.
If you can't find a job, you might turn to other things. Yeah.
So the former governor Tingle, they closed down some mental health institutions. It's got very a lot of those people from
One to the other.
to correctional facilities, right? At the same time, in New Orleans, there was an enormous mental health crisis amongst our people. They're suffering. But they have nowhere to go and get that treatment, that direct one-on-one treatment. And it's probably a city council question, but as a state rep, what can you do in the legislature to kind of like bring some help, mental health intervention in New Orleans?
I mean, that is state and federal, like Metropolitan Health Services. They have 5 in the tri-parish area, and most of their money is for their patients who have Medicaid. They get that, and the rest is they get state general funds. I didn't even know they existed till 2 years ago. That's another thing, as we talked about, the Health and Welfare Committee is starting to understand you can pay now or you can pay later, but it's always money, and to convince people, like I said, you can pay now or it's going to cost more later is a difficult thing to do, because in Louisiana, you can't turn someone away when they go to the emergency room. Okay, you could have sent them to a doctor 6 months ago instead of having to deal with them in the insurance, in the emergency room. Those are longer term, difficult things to do, but we do have the services here. It's just never enough, especially post-COVID with the explosion of the homeless population. I don't know if Metro and other groups go into the encampments. I know they receive a lot of people from there. But that's something the city could fund and do. The city is sitting on a lot of extra money right now, ironically, is to go in there and pull people out before something worse happens. I think the setup is there.
I just had a follow-up question. I know after 2020 with the racial justice uprisings, a lot of cities were trying to enact mobile crisis response teams so that they could divert funds from the police force to then have a mobile, like a trained professional team equipped to meet people wherever they are. And so that would free up the police force as well. And I know that there was some talk at City Council of New Orleans doing something like that. Do you know what's happening at the state level, if they're trying to get something like that kind of program going, or if there's something that we could help?
Aside from the health districts, the human services district, that are already there, that's something you can really press the city council on because they're NOPD funding. And I don't know if y'all remember, I think it was last year when there was a big fuss about something, and NOPD came out and said, majority of our calls are domestic calls. We are not equipped to do this. Like, we're not addiction, we're not mental health professionals. And the city council can do that. They talk about it a lot, like, oh, let's move the cops to violent crime, and then people go in and it keeps not happening. And they do have funds for things like that. And that's a more local issue y'all can push on, because they can go grab the people when the cop shows up and says, there's definitely a deterioration here. On a state level, they can bring them to a state facility. But that is something, actually, why isn't JP Morrell and Helena talking about it? Because JP got really mad and he said, I passed all these, or he passed a lot of, I think it was laws at the state level about dealing with DV situations, except they can't. They might, a cop might have training from a few hours, but it doesn't mean they can really deal with
De-escalation.
with or like an episode, a break. We can work on that at the city level.
What about, we just recently been going out there to Little Woods and doing some campaign trying to find out what's their concerns. Mostly it's crime and youth not having enough activities to do. And I just recently found out myself that NORD can't pay coaches. So on the state level, is there anything that you might can intercede and get those guys paid? If it's no more than a stipend, to get somebody out there to get those youth involved in activities.
I actually don't know if that's something that can be paid for through state funds. I mean, every year we can get a little extra money. Like, I got a little extra money this year for Roots of Music. By the way, they're amazing. I think you can get a little bit here and there. I don't know what's happened with NORD. Like, a man I work with on this in my last campaign used to coach through there. And he says he drives through neighborhoods and the facilities are sitting there empty. And part of it is hard to get a very young parent to do something like that. But the generations have shifted and there's not anyone out there, and like, they're not paying the kids. Was that the lifeguards or something else, like, separately? I don't know what's going on with NORD, because they actually do have money.
I don't know. It seemed like to me, I come from NORD. It seemed like it shifted after Katrina became NORD C, it became a commission. It seemed like all the funding for NORD went away because of this commission. I don't know. And when they added that C, you see now you have to go to the gym and you have to pay $65 per kid to even get your kid involved in any kind of NORD activity. So as we see after Katrina, New Orleans became privatized. It's the privatization.
Is that what happened?
That's what happened.
Yeah, that's pretty much always terrible.
Privatization happened, and you took NORD away and had the commission on it. Now you have to pay to even go to NORD.
That's terrible. And actually, speaking of the unhoused population, I'm sure y'all knew the new director, and when he had a similar position as sort of head of homelessness, I don't know what it's called, he worked directly with the city of Baltimore. Well, he comes here and he has to deal with this huge nonprofit that doesn't really have to answer to anyone. Not privatized per se, but similar. They're getting money, but the city is not doing anything with it. So you have someone who works for the city having to go through a private company, essentially, and where's the money and what's going on. I didn't realize NORD that had happened to Nord.
Yeah.
Those are things the city council can probably undo. Although some with Unity is some federal housing funds. I don't know if it's all of it. These are good things to make your at-large city council members sit down. And maybe there's answers that you don't want to hear, but that would make it clear. I don't know about Nord though, but I know Unity gets some federal housing funding.
I like to shift the question to climate change. Given that we live in the deep south and we're also near Cancer Alley, what are some policies you would support to address air pollution in the urban spaces?
You mean here in New Orleans?
Yes.
Most of it's long term, like more trees, more private residences with drainage and that sort of thing. Remember during COVID how beautiful the weather was because there were no cars.
Right.
But bike lanes and biking is so controversial here. I don't know what the answer is there because people freak out about it, but it would help with heat in the city. But I would never ride. I don't ride a bike around the city. It's dangerous. Those are things we can do on a city level, but they're extremely, extremely divisive. And I don't know if I have an answer to how to get cars off the road in New Orleans. But that's kind of what it is. I mean, it was beautiful during COVID, and it was June, and it was beautiful. And it turned right back to where we were. Now, public transportation is also a hill I will die on. That why don't we have better public transportation in a city as poor as this? That's why people drive around without a license, because there's not good public transportation. Sorry, without insurance, because they can't depend on the bus. And RTA is trying. I really think they're trying, but you got to get all the other parishes involved, and there's always construction, but that would help significantly.
We're gonna lose a lot of coal if the gas don't stop going up.
That's another problem.
Yes.
That's another problem. I mean, RTA should be free, and it is in some cities and countries. It's not that expensive. It's not that expensive to ride it or for them to make it free, but it might be. It is a big part of someone's paycheck if they don't make a lot of money. It should be free. That should be doable.
It'd be free, and I understand we so rich in Louisiana with all the gases that we produce. And look at the city, look at the condition of the people in this city. Where's the taxation on with the gas?
They just take and take from us, and I don't think at a state level they understand fully that we have a city of 350,000 that is supporting 17 million tourists each year. And they complain about the roads and sewage and water board, and it's not 350,000 people using it. And they pull so much of our money out. And the mayor was able to get some more back. It was right before I got there, like 5 or 6 years ago. They take our money. They take it. We can secede and be the city-state of Orleans. I've heard that many times.
We can see it and we feel it.
Yeah, shift it again. There's been a big concern about pets.
Pets?
Pets, animals.
Okay.
Mainly dogs. Shortage of assistance, especially like he was speaking like in the lower ninth ward, certain areas where they can't get assistance. They don't have places to go play with their dogs, to get them socialized or anything like that. I heard him speak about like the bike lane. Some people was thinking about more parks, ways to be able to get the assistance or get to places to get assistance, because if they don't have a car, they can't get the bus or any other transportation because they need service animal paperwork and things like this. So there's a lot of people, unfortunate people, they need all kind of assistance, plus places to go, plus kids that love. And I believe this could like also bring more business and jobs, and may stop or help slow up the growing like stray animals and animals having to go to the shelter and be euthanized or anything like that. Is there any way, anything you can do for the city? Or?
Well, first, we could have a better program to spay and neuter, and I don't know why we don't. For example, I had some friends who lived in New York City, and about 5 years ago, they adopted a dog from Tennessee, and I was like, why are you flying in a dog from another state? And they say, we don't have strays here. Like the big cities on the East Coast, they deal with them. They deal with strays. I'm telling you, they literally, it was a plane of stray dogs they were flying in. And that's doable. But of course, SBCA and Arno and all are always operating on a shoestring with what they can do. Dog parks are something that it seems like a lot of foundations and nonprofits love to do, but it's hard to get it someplace like the East because it is so big geographically. So, you'd have to put it in the areas that are busier. Then you have people uptown who get mad about parks and dog parks sometimes because they're taking up all kind of space, which is strange to me. But they do need things like that, and especially for kids to go to and modern play equipment. And those are things that you can get these foundations with tons of money. I don't know what they do to do things like that, but that is a process to get started too. But I think that's doable.
I have a question, real quick. I know rules and laws govern every dynamic of our life, even the composition of committees on Capitol Hill. Is there a way that we could tweak those rules, put some representation in the ACJ or any committee where we have to present bills? Because some of those committees are
Horrible.
horrible. So if you can point me in a direction, I'll take the bills, and you can carry them.
Yeah, I'll carry them all. I actually, on a very related note, last summer I told the speaker, last summer or maybe early this year, I said, look, I'll go to ACJ as much as I know it's a bloodbath. I said, I'll go. They need a little help. I think someone else, maybe Rodney Lyons, said, and this was before we heard about all the shifts, and I think I got a let me think about it kind of thing. And then a month later, we saw what he did, and it was horrible. Committee membership is one of the things that is the strongest layer of control of the speaker. For example, y'all know who Blake Miguez is. He's the chair. He was the chair of the Republican caucus, and he's very pro-gun, and he's a troublemaker. The speaker stripped him of committees, just took him off. He was like, all right, you're going to do this to me? You're not going to be able to be on committees. Garofalo, when he did that horrible thing in education about the good of slavery, stripped him from it. So it's a power the speaker holds. We could change the rules of the House, but I don't see that ever happening because you have people who would have to change it with someone who's in charge. So I don't think that could happen because some of us have to be kind of careful and not go too far and not be stripped of their committees. Yeah.
Hello. This is a question Dalton has for you. We would like to know what's your views on the non-unanimous jury verdict controversy?
That has gone back and forth so many times to the point that 2 years in a row I wasn't sure how I was supposed to vote on it because it kept getting changed. I generally followed the chairman, Randall Gaines, because he was more in tune with what had been going on. My view, and I've talked to Bruce and some of them, is what everyone wants is not going to happen. Something can be done in the middle. I don't know what that is. The DAs are not going to move. They're not. And the sheriffs support them. And I don't see the new administration not supporting the DAs. But given that it's 1,500 people, we know who the population is, I think that something could be done there. But I don't agree with 100% or nothing, because that is an uncommon result at the Capitol. It's uncommon. So I still think there's a chance to meet somewhere. And there was a lot of work done 2 years in a row, and then it got switched up. And I don't know who's going to be the chair of Judiciary next year. I mean, when I go back, I'll likely be on it, but I don't know who that's going to be. Maybe Robbie Carter, which would actually be good.
As always, man, you have my food.
You got my vote.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because I think about a third of representatives are going to be new. Some people were termed out, and a few people are going to lose, and a lot of them are going to the Senate. So they still will be in the Senate, but there's going to be a lot of new people in the House, and for better or for worse, it's hard to tell.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah.
One more? Three.
Anyone?
I have one.
Okay.
I guess kind of building off a question you asked me, Vicky. Obviously, the way that Louisiana experiences climate change is very specific, given the history of chattel slavery here, right? And so I'm curious how, or if you've thought at all about what kind of, I know it's like controversial to use the word reparations, but something along those lines that would mitigate the harm that, you know, big oil and gas has caused to this area.
We'll definitely never use that word or go close to it. There's certain words you cannot use with my colleagues at all.
We'll use it for you, then. So you're not-
Come up with a new word for that. But that's like Bruce and I were talking about. Where did Bruce go?
Over there.
Oh, talking. Sometimes part of the battle is reframing things in a different word. The sex work decrim bill, like I have some of my colleagues who they don't use the word prostitute anymore. They know to use the word sex worker because I just kept repeating it over and over. So a new word for that. So this is something that's been interesting. I don't know if y'all saw the carbon capture nonsense at the Capitol this year. So I don't fully understand it, but it's something that in theory is green, environmentally friendly, takes the carbon and stores it underground. But of course it's all about money, and of course it's about is this safe because it's new, and are the jobs really going to be green? And something that happened right before the vote, which made me see red, because it's hard to tell what the answer is. The governor's office told the Black Caucus, this is totally safe, this new technology, it's green, it's alternative, it's safe, you don't have to worry about it, it'll be a lot of jobs, but if you don't vote against this bill, we're gonna put it in your community. So I said, is it safe and green and jobs, or is it not? If it's the first, hell yeah, there's lots of money there. Go where Cancer Alley is and put in something clean. But is it? And it's things like that to dig into. I would say I probably don't trust it just because of historically what's happened in those communities. So there's things like that. I don't think there will ever be cash or anything like that, but like better industry is completely possible, even though those areas are losing population because of illness and jobs there. I think it would have to be something more structured, like jobs are a new economy or something, and maybe it is carbon capture.
Investing in green infrastructure.
Maybe it is. I mean, Devontae Lewis, our new PSC commissioner, is a good friend of mine, and he's all about teaching people that alternative energy and green infrastructure is actually more economically beneficial in the long run. My Bayou colleagues who were oil and gas forever, they're switching to solar and wind because they have the infrastructure, and they're like, we can make money off this. We're not making it off oil and gas anymore. So those are all possibilities for sure.
Before we wrap up, we would just like to thank you for answering, of course, our questions. Voters Organized would like to thank you, but maybe this could be your time for sharing what it is, what your interests are, what concerns, and how it is that you support the work that we stand on. So I allow you to speak at this time.
I very much use y'all as a resource up there. We don't get any assistance. I get one aide. She makes more than me. She makes no money, and she does constituent stuff. So all of the research, all of the work, all of the learning is just on us. I can handle a lot more than other people just because of my background. But I depend on groups like y'all, ACLU, OPD, on the civil law side, different groups to help educate me and do work for me. And so I'm extremely thankful for all y'all because sometimes we go to the floor. I've been in committee all morning and there's 100 bills and 20 of them are terrible, and you can't see that coming in. So that is very helpful. I really appreciate how y'all have spread into other areas, healthcare, like I said, in education. It could be great to do more on the education committee next year. That would really be great. Even things like agriculture. They've been looking at hemp and alternative forms of agriculture. That is really something to get people into, especially in the rural areas. Because my rural areas, the legislature's rural areas get forgotten, or only the rich people there are taken care of. And there are a lot of people who are poor and formerly incarcerated, and who y'all could represent more if you just knew more about it. And I think they're very important to get through to them for sure. But I appreciate the sort of diverse areas of interest y'all have been looking at, and I think we can keep expanding that. Y'all have a ton of members who are very active, and there are not many groups on our side of the table who do have a lot of people who come, and the other side has a ton of people who are involved. And y'all were smart about hiring a really good lobbyist. Ryan has helped significantly. He knows the Capitol. I think he agrees with all of this in principle. He can't admit that. But hiring professionals up there to play the game is really important too. So thank you. I appreciate y'all so much too.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was great. If anyone wants to have a late lunch, I am going to do that.